Hi there, this is Erik from SB Insight and Sustainable Brand Index. In this video I'm going to go through an actual analysis report from one of our clients. So it's a real report. Of course, I've taken some measures to hide the identity of the client and the category and other potentially sensitive things, but you'll get a good idea of what it looks like. The analysis report is actually, it's our best seller. It's what most of our clients use. We actually have 3 different report levels. So you have the data report, which is much more focused on the data as it sounds, not too much analysis, and you have to draw the conclusions yourselves basically. The analysis report, the middle option here, is really what's usually recommended, and you can see what it consists of, and I will go through that in this video. And then of course we have the strategy report as well, which is the XL, the bigger size report, which is really a bit more tailored, a bit more adapted to maybe a specific challenge. You also get data access and a tailored setup basically. But let's go through the analysis report, because the structure of the analysis report, that's really the core of a strategy report and the data report as well. It's more the other things that differ. So let's go through this report, and this is the table of contents, so you get a good idea. First of all, we like to think a bit from the outside in, what's happening on the market in general, so the market development. In Finland, in this case, as you might have spotted, this is a report for a Finnish company. So the development of sustainability in Finland, and then we move into the ranking, the Sustainable Brand Index, basically, looking a bit at that. Then chapter 3 is really diving into that and the perception of the brand, the competitors, the details, what's the drivers, what are the drivers behind this brand and how they are perceived, and what are potential strengths, potential weaknesses, etc. Number 4, of course, the consumer, the sustainable consumer, and also the unsustainable consumer, but basically getting to know the consumer and how they are reacting or acting when it comes to sustainability. And then last but not least, because I think that's actually the most important part, number 5 here, the analysis and recommendations part, which is turning data into insights, because data is nice. We have a lot of data. It's fun to play around with, but at the end of the day, what you want to know is probably, okay, what does it mean for our brand, and what does it mean that we should do to actually address this or adapt to this changing market or this position that we have at the moment. So first chapter, market development, but basically looking at these things and to see this is how it's going for the Finnish market. We look at the development for brands in general. We look at the sustainability communication. How do people perceive that? What are drivers for credible communication? What are drivers for not so credible communication? So basically to get a good idea, okay, this is how the market, this is where the market is at the moment. And the market then consisting of consumers, but also of course other things like regulations and so on. Then we move into the ranking chapter, and as you probably know, the ranking is official, so you can find the Sustainable Brand Index ranking on our website and in our official reports. But of course, in this analysis report, we go deeper into the ranking to provide insights about where your brand is ending up and of course the competition and so on. So this is just an overview and some examples, but looking at, of course, explaining what the ranking is and how it's working, but also like how are we developing as a brand versus the market in general, or the market average, our industry, are we going in line or better or worse? Same for the competition. We also have some cases. You can see Elovena here, for example, which is number 1 in Sustainable Brand Index Finland in 2024. So what can we learn from that? We have other cases from other countries. Everything to provide some kind of insights on what are best practices basically in building a sustainable brand. All right, so next part or next chapter is the brand chapter, your sustainable brand. Diving into your brand, of course, how you're perceived from a more of a sustainability perspective in general, but also then into the details around it. And same for the competitors. So let's have a look. The contents here are quite extensive, I would say. This is some of them, and what we're looking at here. Of course, we start out with an explanation. How do we measure sustainability in terms of perception? The different things here. So that's one thing, and then you have a lot of, as you can see, a lot of fancy graphs here. I've also masked them so you can't see the brand names, basically. But what we're looking at here is the ranking over time for each brand within environmental responsibility, within social responsibility. We also break it down into awareness. So basically, what do people know about the brand and the brand's work with environment and social responsibility? Who has no knowledge at all, who has some kind of gut feeling, basically maybe not too aware of what they're doing, but they do have some sense. And also, of course, who are those who have knowledge about the brand and what they're doing. So that is one thing. And then we look at the attitude. So you know, what is the attitude to the brand in terms of environmental and social responsibility? Who's positive, who's negative, etc., etc. And again, same for all the brands and all the competitors. So you get a full good idea, or a really good idea, and a full picture of, like, this is the industry. And you can choose the brands. So you choose the brands you want to have in here. It can be direct competitors, but it can also be brands that are maybe not in your industry, but you still want to have some idea of how they're doing. But then you want to know not only, like, this is the situation from a more overarching perspective and what people think and feel about us, but actually, you know, what are driving these feelings and thoughts and attitudes. So that's where we go into these associations, and these are the things that really, okay, if you talk about something that's going to drive your brand, if you talk about an area or a topic which is connected to environmental responsibility, hopefully and probably that'll drive your overall perception within that area, or that part of the index. So first of all, we have a look at you know, the open-ended answers. Really, you know, what are the spontaneous associations connected to this brand? And in this case, you can see that they have many very nice associations that are positive and really good for them, basically. So you get a good idea of that. We move into the next part, the next layer. So we can say that the spontaneous thoughts are the first layer. Second layer, you have these associations that are to 10 areas. These are the 10 areas that consumers deem to be most important in general, regardless of the industry. So these are the same for all industries and categories. So in this part, you can compare yourself to, you know, any brand you want to. It doesn't have to be in your industry. But you can see here, this is the development also over time. And I actually think I also added 2022 here. So you can see that, okay, here we have a development for this particular brand. They have actually strengthened their position within some areas, but, you know, more or less the same, fairly stable, I would say. You can see that it's gone up in health, which is, you know, given that it's food, that's an important aspect. Of course, also putting it in the context of the competition, you can see here, so some of the competitors, you can also see here that some of these competitors are actually quite much stronger when it comes to animal issues, which is, of course, a key topic in food production. So that's something to note for this brand. Then we move into the third layer, which is the most detailed layer, I would say. This is where we have these areas that are specific for your category. So these are, depending on the category, you have between 25 to 30 areas that are specific for the category. So we ask about, you know, what do people think about you and your brand and your competitors within all of these areas. So here you can see for this brand, the development, you can see it's going up and down depending on the area. For example, we can see here number 2 here that animal welfare is actually going in the right direction for this brand. So we do see that, you know, when it comes to the detailed areas, this is more detailed, that we can actually see that this is where they've had some positive effect. But I know also, not mentioning too much, but this is a company that has talked a lot about animal welfare. So it's encouraging to see that consumers have actually noticed it, and then they can see that you know, very clearly here. And of course, a lot of areas, I'm not going to stay here for too long, but a lot of areas, and it would be the same for your category or your industry. Some areas people have no idea what brands are doing, which is quite natural. Of course, also putting it into the context of the competition. So you can see here are the competitors. I've also removed them, but you can see, for example, in this case, the client in question, they're actually fairly strong within transparency according to consumers if you compare to the other industries, or sorry, the other competitors here. So that's a good thing for the company in question, I would say. And then moving on to one thing that I'm briefly going to mention, because this is very unique depending on the brand. Of course, everything is depending on the brand, but this is something that we look at, because the things that we just looked at when it came to, you know, these 3 layers, the brand drivers there, those are things that you can actually impact. You know, you can communicate, you can do a lot of good work within sustainability, and hopefully people will see that and notice that. Then there are, of course, factors that you cannot really affect, and we actually look at them as well. And just to give you an idea of what we're looking at, it's, of course, industry factors. At the top here, you can see, you know, what do people think about the industry or the category in question, you know, because that can drive you or it can hold you back. You know, either people have a positive perception or they have a very negative one. And then, of course, company factors like origin, ownership, history, those things affect a lot how people perceive your brand in sustainability. And then last but not least, the brand factors. You know, do we have a strong brand awareness in general? Do we have a strong brand image? Do people like us in general? They're probably going to spill over in how we are perceived within sustainability, and vice versa. So we analyze that and we quantify that. Moving on to the consumer chapter and understanding consumer preferences and priorities and, of course, behaviors. That's key. So what we're looking at in this chapter is really a variety of things, but we start out with how important sustainability is in the industry or the category in question versus other categories in industry. So that's, you know, to get an idea of how prioritized is our category or industry as you know, on the market in general. We're looking at barriers and opportunities. What are things that can actually make people want to pay a bit more for sustainability, or at least act in a sustainable way? So those are some examples of those. And then, of course, big focus on the things that you might see here, the bar charts in the middle and the spider web there as well, like what are priorities. Then we look at the same areas as we did in the brand chapter and the brand associations, and we look at, okay, what are priorities? What do people think you need to work with as a brand in this category? And also, what are hygiene factors? What are things people really expect from you? You have to deliver on this. You cannot not deliver. But also, what are things that are a bit more of maybe differentiators and things where you can actually, brag a bit about, and the difference between these two types of areas where you can, where you have to deliver and where you can actually over deliver a bit. And then, of course, moving into the behavior groups, which you might have seen in the official reports, where we introduce them and give you the numbers. But basically what we do in this part in the analysis report is to look at the behavior groups in depth, much more in depth, to understand who they are, where they live, demographics, etc. But also, of course, how they relate to your brand, and where you can find your heavy users and how to address them. How do we communicate with an ego in our customer base, or with a smart consumer in our customer base? So much more detailed in that sense. And then, of course, also we do look at customers in this case, also like what are key characteristics connected to sustainability in your customer base, for example. So a lot of details and segmentations in this chapter that I'm not showing here, but this is also very adaptable if you want to have certain segments. Maybe you have marketing personas internally that you want to add here. That's also usually very, very manageable for us to do that. So that's something I could actually recommend myself that you do to make this even more a good fit internally to work with. All right, last but definitely not least, instead this is, according to me, the most important part of the report, the analysis and recommendations chapter. And this is of course, highly unique for each client of ours, but I will give you a walk through the framework and how we go about it, so to speak. This is where we apply our more than 15 years of experience in performing Sustainable Brand Index, but also, of course, working actively with big multinational brands and helping them build sustainable brands and communicate sustainability. So just to give you an overview, first of all, in this case, for this particular client, summarizing a bit, what's the situation for the brand, what are key challenges, what are problems that they might have connected to the brand and sustainability and the industry, what are their strengths, weaknesses, and so on. So we really kind of provide them with this is the current situation for the brand at the moment. And then we go about the analysis, and we have this framework for the analysis. It's 5 parts. So we start out looking at the brand and the strategy. Then we move into the sustainability roadmap, or the journey and the targets that you have. Then we look at the focus areas, and then the target groups. And then last in that funnel, we look at the communication. So how do you go about to make credible and relevant sustainability communication? And again, I'm not going to show you the details here, but basically this is just an overview for this client, where we looked at certain topics, basically, because in this case, this is a client we have been working with for many years. So we of course evaluate, where can we actually contribute to their work this year. So in this case, as you might see at the top left here, you can see that some parts of the funnel are highlighted, or rather they are in a darker blue color. So you can see those are the ones we focus on. It's the brand and the strategy, it's the focus areas and the communication. So that's where we feel that we have the most to contribute with this year. And basically going through that and providing them with analysis and of course, actionable recommendations. This is what you have to do to improve the position on the market. And of course, the more we know about your particular situation, and if there are certain challenges you're facing, the better. Then we can also tailor the recommendations directly to those. So yeah, that gives you a good idea, and hopefully also you got a good idea of the entire report. And if you feel that this is something for you, do not hesitate, but actually just reach out to me or one of my colleagues, and we look forward to talking to you.